Hello everyone and welcome back to the Hearthstone Grand Prix here at DreamHack in Valencia. We are in round number 4. We're going to be kicking off very soon. We've had 3 rounds of Hearthstone so far of the Swiss, and we've had a lot of ups and downs for a lot of the players, but definitely a lot of great Hearthstone. And bringing you this round is going to be Lothar and Subtle. I like the way you moved closer. Thanks, Lothar.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, I just hit your mic, sorry. But yeah, you're going to be bringing you this round. I believe the first match we're going to be having is Odemian versus Fluffy. And Odemian likes his Swiss, doesn't he, Sol?
Before we get into any of that, I just quick comment on the fact that, we wind Lorinda up and just throw him out there into the crowd to interview some players. And he just goes, ooh, pretty lady who's not actually in the tournament. We'll interview you. Come on.
At least the questions were PG rated.
That's fair, yeah.
But Odemian.
Yeah. Fantastic matchup that we have coming up. Odemian is a name, probably one of the absolute top tier of players that you might not have heard of that you should have done. He has a phenomenal record throughout the DreamHack Grand Prix circuits as a whole. In fact, this is a very, very big game for him potentially because he now has 41 total DreamHack Grand Prix wins, which is tied with Crane for the most of all time. So if he picks up this win, goes to 42, he will be out alone with the highest number of wins throughout all historical DreamHack Grand Prix events, which is a phenomenal achievement. That is a great thing to have next to your name, right?
Yeah, especially when DreamHack is so stacked, right? Like, there were no DreamHacks. So, I rocked up to a DreamHack and it was, fairly easy. There wasn't, too many players there or, whatever. DreamHack, the best players in the world go to these events every single time. And, even this one with the most amount of players is extremely stacked, Lothar.
I mean, 288 players. Even if the the overall level is lower, it's still really tough to go through to the top 16. Odemian actually, remember that was last year, DreamHack Summer, kind of snook into the top 16, and everyone was like, wait, I think I know the guy. And yeah, everyone played him at some point in some tournaments, and he was kind of waiting for the breakthrough performance. And I think, although he didn't win anything yet, he was like top 8ing, top 16 enough of times to actually break into the pro scene like by a long shot, to be fair.
It's all about the mark of consistency, right? This is a thing that I think we all need to do a better job of painting the picture for like who the best Hearthstone players are. It's not the guy that's won one tournament and then does nothing for 12 months, right? It's the guy that consistently comes back over and over again and gets the job done. And Odemian could have the highest number of wins after this series. That's not because he's found some sneaky DreamHack Grand Prix somewhere that no one else has been able to enter and just picked up some random wins. He's entering the same number of tournaments as everyone else. He just has a higher average number of wins than anyone else.
As far as I'm aware, there isn't a DreamHack Antarctica or something where there's like, 2 players and a penguin. Is that the right way around?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Got him. Too excited about that.
Arcturus is bear, so anti-bear is the one that has no bears. Yeah.
There's a lesson from Solar Freeway to remember it, but we can check out the classes and the bands that these players are going to be bringing. And this really interests me so much at DreamHack. Last hero standing lineups we've seen are so important here.
Yeah, massive. And I think, time after time, we've been seeing J Druid come together as either the dominant deck or the deck that's being banned. And we potentially have both sides of that coin in this equation. We have Fluffy's Druid going down. We have Odemian's Druid remaining up. But Fluffy does have that Rogue. And I mentioned earlier that I felt like Miracle Rogue could be the deck, the missing link here that we haven't seen really stopping J Druid get more than 1 win, right? J Druid comes up, cue that Miracle Rogue, snipe it out, stop it from snowballing the series.
That is definitely true. And in this lineup, Fluffy actually has, which is very important, 2 decks that can battle against the Druid. Both Shaman and the Rogue can be an answer, so he doesn't fall short when he actually needs to go through the J Druid. That's at least in the theory. Of course, we know that with innervates and stuff, it can accelerate the problems for any class. But at the same time, we didn't talk about Fluffy at all.
No, but you can talk about Fluffy as the match is getting ready to start.
Okay.
So we are about to kick off round number 4 with this match of Odemian versus Fluffy. It's coming right up now.
All right, so we're back with the game, I assume. What I wanted to say about Fluffy is that I spoke with him in 2016, if I remember correctly, WESG.
Okay.
He won the European qualifiers and then went to China. Can't remember the exact result that he had. It was quite some time ago. But he is in the same testing group, because he's Swedish, with Orange, with Powder, and with Sidonia, actually.
And Boston as well is the other member, right?
Yes, exactly. So he has a really good testing group, and hopefully this gives him results as well in this tournament. Although, we have to mention that those players are not 3-0. They're actually 2-1.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, and it's a tough point to be at 2-1. It makes this game all the more important, if anything else, because a double loss this early on is going to be very, very tough, especially with the increased number of players, the extra round. You know, 8-2 is the record you're shooting for, even to be firing away on tie breaks. So you really want to be going for that 9-1 for the big security. But after all that time we spent setting up Jade Druid, actually going to be the aggro druid coming out from Odemian. And Fluffy here looks like he's queued up the Evolve Shaman, so he's definitely won the battle of the opening queue here, because single-handedly Devolve can just have a game-winning impact on this matchup, be it just smashing away a bunch of buffs from Mark of the Lotus or Power of the Wild, or just hitting that living mana and just essentially pushing the GG button straight away.
That is true. Like, this might be the key card to win this matchup, but at the same time, Odemian knows that in this matchup, he just needs to go all in. There's no way of just playing around it. So if you have a chance to set up as much damage as possible, as soon as possible, and just close it out, you go for it. Because if your opponent has a Devolve, well, he has it. I mean, too bad, right? Oh, interesting. A Druid of the Claw. We don't see that often. I mean, it might be a one-off in the deck, but it's a card that's like recurring in the meta game. It's like sometimes it goes bad because the meta gets aggressive enough to warrant a card that can be both aggressive and defensive.
Yeah, it's also just a nod to making the deck a little bit bigger, because right now, like, if you're going to still play aggro decks, but you're reacting to the Quest Rogue nerf, one of the things you have to be able to do is make your aggro decks still be able to go late against control decks. So we're seeing the aggro decks get bigger and bigger and bigger over time at the moment. We're seeing the standard Pirate Warrior now almost becoming double Bittertide Hydra, just so they have that chance to just get some bigger minions on board later in the game. And I think aggro Druid has followed that same trend. We're seeing more 5-drops now. It used to almost be 3 was the standard. You play 2 living mana and like 1 other 5-drop, be it Finger or a Bittertide Hydra or whatever it is. Now we're seeing living mana, multiple copies of Bittertide Hydra, and then sometimes a Druid of the Claw on top of that as well.
I don't know if I wouldn't actually go for the Violet Teacher route, because it's also viable, like a late game finisher, basically.
Yeah.
But in this situation, you can see the power of both offensive and defensive options for the Druid of the Claw. Just cleared up the entire board, which wouldn't be possible otherwise. So pretty crucial if you ask me. So,
and the double Tar Creeper draw is fairly low power in a lot of matchups, right? If you're playing against a control deck, you don't want to hit those early. You just want to be smashing as much power as you possibly can with the more efficient minions, the more efficient offensive minions. In an early board struggle matchup, like against another aggressive deck, be it a Murloc Paladin or in this case the Evolve Shaman, double Tar Creeper is actually a lot of security and a lot of protection to stop the Shaman picking up value trades with Flame Tongue Totem, etc., into your more valuable minions.
Or an example, the Jade Claw, right? A weapon.
That's a 2/6.
Holy moly, that's an amazing evolve. But you can think about the Tar Creeper in this deck. Serves a very similar purpose as had the Shield Bearer in Zoo. It's basically the same thing. Like it has a very high survive. Oh my god, it can survive anything. And
nice swerve.
So basically, it can get those buffs pretty easily because it most likely will survive one attack from the weapon, can defend your small minions, so you can go off with your combo cards like Mark of the Lotus or the Power of the Wild. So I really like the addition, especially in this current meta game, that we don't know exactly which direction is going to be taking.
Right.
Because it's still a good, like, it's not the best minion against control decks, but it's still against control decks, like an example against Warrior. Your opponent will need to sacrifice 2 swings of a weapon to kill it, or use a slam or execute on top of it, right?
Yep. I like how Odemian has started to weave in those hero powers already. His hand is getting a little bit dry because he's in such a good position. He doesn't even necessarily want to play Living Mana at any point in this game because that just kind of gives an out to your opponent to just swing the game back from out of nowhere if they hit the devolve on it. So because that Living Mana is kind of dead to him at the moment, he's having to weave in his hero power just to stretch out the value of his hand a little bit more. And he started doing that on the previous turn, using it to pick up a nice trade on the 2-6. I really like that style from the position that he's in right now.
I agree.
And you'll probably see it again here. Yep, there it is. One card, buff it up, and then hero power again, just to stretch out the value that he has.
Most likely Talk Reaper attack, because you don't want to kind of get into the range of Milestone Portal. Even if you want to, then Patches seems better than the Flame, the Firefly.
Sure.
Because it's still the same situation. Basically, you deal if it deals 2 damage, it's over anyway.
Yeah.
But in this case, Patches is like kind of the most expendable minion here.
Fluffy looking for the Wrath of Air totem, which would have allowed him to push through the Tar Creeper there instead of the Druid of the Claw, using the 1/1 as well, which would have opened up some better trades on the board for him in the future. Doesn't get it, has to take out the Druid of the Claw instead, and look at this. This rationing of his resources from Odemian has been beautiful because he's just been able to just squeeze in this hero power perfectly every turn. And it looks like this game is going to end right on cue with him using his last resource that is not that Living Mana that, as I keep mentioning, he really does not want to play in this position.
Yep. I think he has a lot of experience with Hunter.
Maybe.
I mean, the usage of the hero power
Yes.
here is basically the same.
Right.
Like, when you're playing a Hunter deck, you want to squeeze in that hero power as many times as possible because it's basically the hero power, like the card draw that you basically need every single turn to keep up with more controllers decks. In this case, you keep up the tempo, you keep up the pressure, and you don't lose card advantage, which is pretty crucial because of cards like Devolve, which can just swing the board into Shaman's favor like instantly.
Finally, the Flame Tongue Totem is going to go down. Odemian's done such a good job of denying the value of this by just meticulously trading away the board every turn. But he's in such a dominant spot here. Fluffy, if he does pick up Devolve, is going to need to use that Devolve immediately just to transform this board into a majority of Wisps. And then at that point, Odemian's going to feel comfortable just jamming that Living Mana down, trading away the Wisps he has if it's not lethal, and then just ending the game with the Living Mana.
Yep. And then if a Milestone Portal with a lucky totem doesn't happen, I don't know what has to happen. Oh, it's not... Oh, what I
11.
Is that 11? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. The red colors is really triggering me. Fledgling. I thought it's not that, you know, prevalent in the game anymore because the drop is 50% less. Oh, no, wait, that's Arena.
Yeah, that's just not how you build constructed decks, Lothar. It's just not how it works.
No, I know. I just use the autofill, you know.
Ah.
Usually it works.
Explains a lot about your deck building.
Ha. Malygos Hunters, right? And Shamans.
Not looking pretty. The Flappy Bird is going to bite the dust to the Jade Lightning. Taunt Totem does land, but there's just no way back from this point for Fluffy.
And Fluffy loses a favorable matchup, which is very important because if he would have started with the Miracle Rogue, then that was an unfavorable matchup. So now he has a one deck that doesn't really want to play against the Druid, so he's pushed to use his Warrior.
Very true.
So if he loses the Warrior...
I agree with all of that analysis, apart from the fact that I actually think Miracle Rogue is favored against Token Shaman.
You think so?
Yep.
Okay, well... We can agree to disagree.
Bear in mind that, you know, two of the people that, you know, my main practice partners and who I talk to the most about Hearthstone are two of the most biased Rogue players in the world, Casey and Crane. So my opinions on Rogue matchups might be skewed a little bit towards them.
I mean, if you have an opening like that, I can agree. Because this is like the perfect opening for Fluffy. With that Vilespan Slayer, that's just insane. Turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, coin, destroy a minion. So even if you have a downgrade trade, it's still okay.
My bad. I also had it wrong. I think like Rogue is slightly favored against Aggro Shaman is what I said and what I meant, but obviously that's not the matchup, right? You were talking about Rogue versus Aggro Druid.
Yes.
Which is, yes, this is not a favored Rogue matchup by any means. I take it all back.
All right, well, Patches turn 1, EP, straight to the dome. Oh, interesting pickup. The Fan of Knives can actually be impactful in this situation. Jade Blossom. This is actually changing a lot. Do you want to coin it out? Because the problem is you don't have the coin for the Vilespan Slayer. And I feel like you can't really allow this to happen. You need to have it on 10-4.
So it does kind of break even here when you think about it. I do think he's going to go Razor Petal Lasher here, but just to evaluate the Jade Blossom line, if you coined the Jade Blossom, you get 1 extra mana for the rest of the game, meaning theoretically you get to Vilespine Slayer around the same time with that 1 extra mana that you have. And then in the meantime, you will have played the Razor Petal Lasher, so you have the 1 mana activator. So it doesn't really slow down the comboed Vilespine Slayer that much, but Coin in general is just such a powerful card in Rogue. Like, the class is as such that you'd almost rather have a coin in hand than an actual extra mana a lot of the time, right? Just because of the combo activators, the Auctioneer, Questing Adventurer, Arcane Giant, etc., etc.
So this turn, I think there were 2 ways. And I personally would like more the Savage Roar for the burst potential this turn, just to go straight trade with the face. So you build up like a position. I mean, you know, use a face to trade with the 2/2 minion, with the Petal Lasher, and you still have your board, and it's not easy to destroy that board because it's turn 3. So unless your opponent has literally prep Fan of Knives, most likely both creatures are still alive, and there's no backstab because it would have been already used.
Right.
In this way, Fluffy lost 1 minion, and his hand is pretty dry. The innervate value goes down with every single turn now towards the end of the game.
It's actually a really awkward card in this deck, the Innovate, because you can see even there on turn 3, the Innovate was pretty much useless, right? Like, Innovate is almost a card in this deck where it's in your opening hand, great. Any other turn you draw it, it's just a brick.
This is why this is the only Druid deck that actually can use 1 Innervate in the entire deck.
Yes. That has been tried by numerous players. It was almost becoming standard for a little while, I'd say a month to 6 weeks ago, as players were having success with that build. But I think people quickly just figured out that, you know, you can have success with Aggro Druid with almost any build just because it's such a powerful deck, and people fairly quickly gravitated back to that double Innovate because it does have just such insane high roll potential, right, having double Innovate in the deck.
That is true. Well, the Droid of the Claw. Second time we will see it. Interesting pickup from the Sharazim.
Shaku.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, I got you.
I looked at the Sharazim and I'm like, yeah. Anyway, still, Vilespan Slayer on turn 4, the biggest tempo swing that it can have.
Yeah.
I don't think it's even a question what do you do here. Although, if you use your Druid of the Claw trade with the Direwolf, kind of do the same, but then you lose the combo potential for this Vilespan Slayer next turn, because most likely you will have to use the backstab. You might actually not have a target for the backstab, so this seems better.
Fluffy's also was just considering the fact that he has a double Fan of Knives in hand that turn, I think, because Odemian has that Innovate as a dead card right now, which Fluffy will now know is not living mana, but on the previous turn he would have potentially had a read on it being living mana, had it being sat in hand for a couple of turns, sorry. So being able to coin Fan of Knives on this turn against a potential living mana would have been beneficial, but he just had no way to affect the board in a relevant way if he didn't use coin that turn.
Yep, I agree. And now that Innervate is like, yeah, I don't really want to see this card.
Nope.
So I think the Innovate should have been used for the Savage Roar when there was a possibility to just get out to get the value out of the Innovate right now. So the possibility would be to use the Mark of the Lotus in the future turn with whatever you draw, instead of ending up with an Innovate that doesn't really do much. And you still get value out of your hero power.
Blood Mage and Fan of Knives being committed here, which limits his ability to deal with living mana. But I guess the fact that Blood Mage is on board and now hidden behind the 4/6 Druid of the Claw, it's not a big deal to have it hanging around. Odemian bricks again. And even though, after much confusion, we did eventually come to the conclusion that Miracle Rogue is unfavored in this matchup, sometimes you do put those starts together. Sometimes the aggro druid bricks. Just because a matchup is favored for one deck does not mean it's a guaranteed win. There is, of course, that percentage of draws where it just lines up in a favored position for the unfavored deck, and that's exactly what you've seen in this spot.
Yeah, I mean, literally, the same happened in the previous match.
Yep.
So.
And there is the bottom right mark of Yasharaj on the Druid of the Claw, just trying desperately to draw some gas. Doesn't hit it, and that is a very quick series so far that has been fairly blowout games from each side. Quick 1-0 with the aggro Druid in the unfavored matchup against the Evolve Shaman, and then Miracle Rogue of all decks comes storming back to run over the aggro Druid.
Yeah, statistically speaking, we should have a fast round at some point of the day, right?
Well, let's not get our hopes up just yet, Lothar, because just because our on-stream game is fast doesn't mean the rest of the round is going to go any quicker. Yeah.
To be fair, we only had 3 rounds so far. I know. It takes kind of forever to finish those rounds, but at the same time, we had... This is the 7th match on the stream.
Yep.
So we had a lot of content.
Yep. I think we only missed 1 game in all 7 of those matchups. We saw 6 games go from 0-0 to conclusion, and we joined 1 game at 1-0.
So we're still pretty okay in that regard.
Yeah.
It just, 288 people with Swiss system actually takes a while.
It takes time. Coin Edwin Van Cleef does not take time, though. It takes your opponent's spirit away, and there's no prep in hand to really make this thing go off, but one of the ways you can get through... Yeah, exactly. One of the ways you can get through what is another unfavored matchup here for the Miracle Rogue against Freeze Mage-style strategies is just jamming out that early Edwin, hoping it can connect once or twice. Freeze Mage does have answers to that. They can kind of go Frostbolt Doomsayer on turn 4 if it comes down a little bit later, or they can just try and chain a Frostbolt into a Fireball over a couple of turns to deal with it. But it is one of the highest percentage win rates for Miracle Rogue in this matchup, as honestly it is in most matchups.
But he didn't go for the Edwin, and to be fair, I think he was playing safe. But it will turn out good for him, because the Volcanic Potion would just allow Odemian to swing back the entire board in his favor.
Oh, yeah, I mean, like, that situation is almost the exact opposite of what I'm saying. Edwin just needs to come down as a huge threat in this matchup a lot of the time. So just coining out Edwin there wasn't going to get too much done. Now, as a 6-6, there's a chance to get some threats rolling. If it's answered cleanly by Fireball, you at least just curve straight into Sherazin and keep the threats coming one by one.
I'm not sure about that. Sometimes I can understand why you're saying in this situation, because it's a 6-6 on turn 3. But at the same time, Sherazin does almost the same. It's a smaller output of damage. The matchup is pretty slow anyway. And the fact that you can keep the coin and the hallucination in your hand allows you to basically resurrect Sherazin at least once. And that might be enough value to actually validate being a little bit slower and a little bit more greedy. But it's not easy to predict that outcome, like, when you're playing, when you don't see the other person's hand, and you had no indicators of what's going to happen next turn.
Right. I think actually this form of Miracle Rogue is the most complex there's ever been in the terms of how you manage your resources, right? Because you have so many cards in this deck that kind of demand usage of your cheap spells. The Arcane Giants, the Sherazin, the Auctioneers, the Questing Adventurers, the Edwin Van Cleef.
Yeah.
They all want you to use your backstabs and your coins and your preps to make them do good things, but you can't use them on all of them. So understanding the matchup, like which resource you want to be allocating your cheap spells for in which individual matchup, and then even beyond that, adapting that knowledge to individual situations and not being rigid and linear in your approach to those matchups.
I agree.
I think back in the day when you had like Counterfeit Coin and Tomb Pillager in your deck, like you just had so many resources, it almost didn't matter what you used them on a lot of the time.
That is true. And it was like pretty straightforward. You just played turn 4 Tomb Pillager, and it's just like, yeah, I get a coin.
It was just Rogue Druid. You just played the dude that was green every turn.
Yeah. But look at that. I was actually thinking, what if we go a little bit fancy here, and we use the coin and the backstab on the 1/1 pirate to get a bigger Van Cleef and resurrect Sherazin the same turn? Would you just switcheroo the backstab with just a 5/3 minion? I think it's worth it, right?
It's tough. He does have Auctioneer in hand, which I don't think he feels like this hand is getting there just yet. And going off on a big Auctioneer turn, Actually, it gives you a little bit of tempo in future turns because it will help discount that Arcane Giant that you have phenomenally as well, because you'll push through to the preparations and so on that will get that thing cheaper and cheaper. So I think he's just trying to line up a bigger Gadgetzan Auctioneer swing turn here, and now just refusing to give up tempo to that Doomsayer. Didn't even protect a board state, just Vilespine Slayered for tempo purely in that situation.
I like it.
I like
the
it too.
decision. All right, well, is this the turn? If you use the Fireball, you're left with 3 mana, so you can play the Lasher and have Backstab Coin and the Petal for the next turn with Auctioneer. If you go for the Auctioneer this turn...
Still 2 preps in the deck, still 2 counterfeit coins in the deck, I believe, if you know he's running a standard build here. So he's got pretty high percentages to just go off at this point. But if he's playing the Razor Petal Lasher, it looks like he's whiffed pretty hard on the draws. Yeah, Vilespine Slayer and Shaku picked up. Not what he was looking for at all.
And now he might actually stop in the tracks, because those cards that he has in his hand are not really dictating any development here. Like, okay, I can play as 5/5 minion for 6 mana, maybe the Shaku. But other than that, they're not really that threatening to the mage. Of course, if the mage is able to deal with the position on board, but he now has a trade with the Auctioneer, so there are a lot of options for Odemian to just clear those smaller minions or even just freeze them and wait it out.
Yeah, since he has Alex and then 16 damage to spare here, he can pretty much set up this game plan. If this Arcanologist draws second Ice Block, which it does not, there is a counter spell in his build, then that would have made the game plan very, very linear. If he'd have picked up second Ice Block, he could have just traded into the Auctioneer, Frostbolted the Sherazin, made sure his block doesn't get procced under any circumstances. Turn 9, you Alex Straza, you get 1 block procced, then you go Ice Block Fireball, and then after that, you Pyroblast. Game over. 100% of the time, right? And not allowing for Swashbuckler, Shaku, hallucination type stuff. Since he hasn't been able to find that second Ice Block until he'd spent too much mana to go down that line, he's had to reevaluate.
That is true. It still looks good for him.
Yep.
By the way, the fact that he plays Counterspell, I love it. In Swiss, you can just win a game.
Yeah.
Just because of the fact that you put a Counterspell in your Freeze Mage. No one plays around it. No one will think of it like, oh, wait, maybe it's Counterspell. So in the entire group stage, in the Swiss stage, you can just get free wins because your opponent will play into a Counterspell completely unprepared. It will tilt your opponent and he will just, you know, lose the entire match because of that.
And this is very, very good news for Odemian. The fact that one of the randomly generated mage cards has been played and it's not an Ice Block, that dramatically reduces the chances that he just gets scummed out by some random swashbuckler nonsense here. So you are going to see him go for the Alex Straza line. Now the setup goes down exactly as I described. Even if his block goes down this turn, he reblocks and he fireballs, and then that sets up his Pyroblast lethal for the following turn. This should just be a solved game at this point. Unless Shaku.
I mean, there's still 1 mage card left in the hand.
Yep.
Right, so
but,
Odemian knows that.
Crucially, he's not even popping block number 1 this turn.
Yep.
So, well.
Okay, never mind.
All right, well, now we're pretty much set.
Everyone plays Eater of Secrets. I wonder why.
Yeah. I think the closer your mage deck gets towards Freeze Mage, the more you have to consider playing Eater of Secrets. Because if you consider the mage decks like on a spectrum right now, like there's Gunter Mage over at one side, there's Freeze Mage over at the other, and you can kind of exist on a sliding scale anywhere between that.
Yeah.
The closer you are to the Gunter Mage side, the more favored you are against the decks that are on the Freeze Mage side, right? So if you're further over on the Freeze Mage side, you should play Eater of Secrets so that you then have good matchups against the Gunter Mage side.
That is true. That is true. And you still play around Paladins. You know, a random eye for an eye.
Yeah, it's very true. Very, very true. We nearly saw Ecop get caught out of that. We saw on Ecop's face, he thought he'd made a mistake and forgotten about that eye for an eye.
Okay, I would really like to see the Ice Block right now. Just for, you know. For
it's road cards.
Oh, yeah. What I'm talking about. Never mind.
Yep.
No Swashbuckler, unfortunately. Well, he's able to pop the block.
Yeah, small victory at least moral victory. He got 1/3 of the way there. He killed him once out of the 3 times that is required to win this matchup. You can see exactly why it is such a miserable matchup for the Rogue. If they don't get huge pressure early with a Questing Adventure or an Edwin Van Cleef, then there's just no way you can race through the ice blocks in the 9 or 10 turns you have to get that done. It's just very, very difficult.
Although that's impossible when the mage hits the Alexstrasza.
Yes.
Early on.
Yeah.
And it's a legendary card,
Right.
so it's not like every single time it happens, right?
Right.
It's not that, I mean, probably around, I don't know, 60%?
Well, you're also keeping it in the mulligan in this matchup.
Yeah,
if you know
true.
what you're doing, you are keeping it in the matchup, in the mulligan in this matchup as well.
But it's very risky when you're going first and you keep Alexstrasza in your hand.
Sure.
It's like, oh my god, I need some answers. Even against a agent, I need that Frostbolt, or the Lashers are actually stacking the damage pretty fast as well. And it's only a 2/2 minion. What if I just lose 2 turns of hero powering and the loss of tempo might bite me back, right?
That's fair.
Just because I kept the Alexstrasza. I can understand keeping it when you're going second. But when you're going first, might be a rough call.
Look at this. All right, this is indecision. And I don't like indecision, okay? First and foremost, there are people disagree massively on this, right? Some people keep quests, some people throw it away. The point is, you should have tested and know this going into the matchup, right? I don't like sitting there and thinking about it. Maybe he has alternates to consider. He didn't actually see the counterspell get used, right?
Yeah, he didn't.
Sometimes, like, quest even gets kept against Secret Mage just as a proc for counterspell in some weird occasions, because they value other cards like Battle Rage, Execute, etc. more highly than the quest in the matchup. But I can definitely listen to both sides of the argument, as opposed to whether you're supposed to keep the quest or not versus Freeze Mage. We saw a player throw it away today already. I think it was Maverick that ended up doing that.
And he lost because of that the entire match, because he didn't draw his win condition at any point of the game. So it's not that given, like you always mulligan away or you just always keep it. It depends on what you have seen from your opponent's cards.
And it depends on your tech choices in the deck as well. Like, do you have Dirty Rat Harrison, for example? If you have Dirty Rat Harrison, you can Dirty Rat their Alexstrasza, Dirty Rat their Antonidas, Harrison their Atiesh away if they're playing Medivh, and then you have a way to exhaust them completely. But again, the point I'm trying to make here is that I do not like that expression from Fluffy where he mulliganed the rest of his hand, then he paused on the quest, moused over it, and kind of looked up to the sky as if he was thinking about it. That is a decision you should have made going into this tournament.
I would understand the lack of this, lack of decisiveness in his state if Odemian would have actually shown like some tech cards.
Sure.
But in this situation, he did never see a card that was like kind of weird in this deck, right? Only standard cards basically. But like he has no idea that there's a counterspell in this deck when you have seen like the use of the coin in this matchup, right?
That is an ugly glyph into an ugly tome. Primordial Glyph is a tiny bit overrated by the community. There is actually around a 23-24% chance that you end up with a card that is roughly around like Flame Geyser in quality. Like basically you just end up with a crappy card, right, is what I'm saying. Like Bad Secrets, Flame Geyser, Arcane Explosion, like that's the kind of glyph that you're offered. That's kind of what we saw there. Like Kabbalist Tome is an okay value card in the matchup, but it's not like you're ever going to outvalue the Warrior. The only reason you take Kabbalist Tome there is that your other options were trash, and so you try and rebuy Kabbalist Tome into more burn.
Exactly what I want to say is like, you either want to get burn, or when I, which kind of makes me laugh, when I talk with people about Kabbalist Tome, and they always say, well, you can always get a second one. I'm like, if you pick a card just to get a random copy of it back, it says that the card is literally trash.
Right. Dirty Rat time. All right.
Well, not terrible. Not terrible. The fact that he has so many taunt minions, even if he pulls out Alexstrasza here, he doesn't even need to deal with. He can just, just have it, you know, just kill one of my taunt minions. I don't really care. I can leave that execute here in my hand just in a crucial moment where I'll have to like brawl and then damage the left minion and then execute that. So he was really safe when it comes to his options.
This is kind of hilarious because Fluffy is, of course, marching towards completing his quest here, but first and foremost, he's actually just putting a beat down on the Freeze Mage just with like inefficient taunt minions. Like he's actually doing a better job of pressuring Odemian than he was when he was playing Miracle Rogue, which is a much, much more aggressive deck.
That is true. And when you think about it, the freeze mage, or like, you know, the mage deck that you can't rename because it's such a hybrid, also wants to do the same because they want to pressure with inefficient minions in the beginning of the game as well. Like, even Acolyte of Pain is cool. It's like, deals 1 damage, it's really awkward to deal with. Arcanologist just deals 2 damage, gets you a card advantage. Pretty much the same as Fluffy, Fluffy deck. So it's pretty hilarious to see that. And now Odemian, with the additional ice barrier, can actually get back some of the health points that he lost because of that small chip pressure. Ooh.
Anti-climax Dirty Rat is always... I swear to God, Dirty Rat is the 7th minion so often. You just get this huge anti-climax. Thank you. Oh, triggers me so much.
Well, unlucky.
Yep.
I mean, Odemian.
Yep. I think we're going to a 2-2 series here, boys. This one is looking rather wrapped up in this position.
I think the Antonidas is dead. Most likely.
Ooh. Well, well, well. As we said, the counterspell was not seen in the previous series. It's an unusual card. You made the exact point of how much of an advantage you get for putting a weird card into your deck. I think that's what we just saw with the Whirlwind in hand that could have quite happily been used there to deal with counterspell.
There was no reason to play the Whirlwind, though, right? So,
apart from to break counterspell, which you don't expect. It's exactly what we're saying, right? An unusual card is coming up big for Odemian in that spot.
It was actually...
not going to be enough, though.
2 card rule, right? 2 card rule?
Yeah. At least the Matriarch was injured, or the Hatchling was injured, and the Face was injured as well, so it would have been at least 2. I'm not sure if the other minion was injured at the time. Don't think it was.
But as I said, doesn't really change much. The Archmage Antonidas didn't actually do anything. You practically play with a 28-card deck right now.
Yep.
With a win condition. So that's kind of sad for Odemian when I think about it. I like the design of the thread, but I'm not really sure if it's fair. Like, that's the thing, right?
It's really swingy, right, is the problem. I think a lot of people do really like that card because it feels like they feel like it gives them counterplay against combo decks that they never had before. Right? People that just try and hoard a 3 or 4 card combo in hand until they've drawn it all and then just unleash it on you in 1 turn. Dirty Rat gives you a way to prevent that. You know, the kind of Avianicon thing that we saw previously, like, just blows that kind of thing apart. But Fluffy has decided he is secure enough in this game state that he is just going to go ahead and start firing off rag shots to pressure in this spot. And it's going to end up being a perfect proc on 1 at this point. Block doesn't go down here, but he does lower to 1 health exactly, which is the absolute dream.
It is. I mean, when you deal 8 damage, might not be that impactful, right? Especially when you can't attack with the weapon because it gives your opponent 8 HP. So it's literally your hero power. So,
I mean, it can still be relevant, though. It means, like, for example, this Armor Smith that he has in hand is lethal right now, right? So you can't just, like, Frostbolt the face, put minions in play, hope the hero power doesn't hit you, because the Armor Smith will just poke you to death. So, you know, one of the ways that sometimes you can just squeeze out an extra couple of turns as the Freeze Mage in this matchup is if they have to proc you at 8 with the hero power, and then you just they can't just then weapon you in the face for lethal, for example.
Nope. So here we go. Attack from... with the weapon, execute, Subdue the Fishes actually. No difference. Still allows to break the ice distance without proccing the ice barrier, which is crucial. And now Odemian is facing a really tough situation. Ideally, he wants to play multiple minions, so even if 1 minion dies, he still has some border advantage, but that's not possible. He doesn't even have a spell for 2 mana. He would have used it right now.
And that is just going to lock it up. Whirlwind and the Executes are going to take this series away, and then the Hero Power will connect, guaranteed to face. That is going to be a very quick tied series at 2-2. These players have been playing so fast, by the way. These matchups have all pretty much gone on beyond turn 10, but the speed of which the turns have been taken by the players have made it feel like a very, very quick series.
Speed, violence, momentum.
Shouts to Doc.
Massive shout out with a semi-boner. But now we have a 2-2.
Do you want to tell your bathroom story while we're here?
No. You can check my Twitter for that. But now we have the 2-2 situation back to back. Okay, I'm gonna stop. 2 warriors. It's kind of anticlimactic to end this match with this matchup. It's kind of swingy. Like whoever had a defender in his opening hand is really ahead because you gain +1 on your quest without actually doing anything. Right.
Unless the other guy has Dirty Rat, right? It makes Dirty Rat actually a very, very good mulligan keep or a very good card to mulligan for in the matchup because one of the cards both players will be keeping 100% is Stonehill Defender, and if you then Dirty Rat out the Stonehill Defender, that is a 3-count swing on the taunt counter, right?
Yeah,
you get 1 and it denies 2 from them.
Yeah, it's pretty big. Now it all depends if Odemian actually plays a Dirty Rat on his own.
It's true.
There's the Stonehill Defender.
Yep. Fluffy does have Curator, though, which is actually one of the highest win rate cards in the opening hand in this matchup. Perhaps surprisingly, perhaps unsurprisingly, depending on how hard you think about it. The game always gets to turn 7 and beyond, and then just having one card that's essentially a 3-in-1 taunt minion for you is, of course, huge benefit in the matchup. People just might be initially a bit surprised to hear that because, of course, 7 mana cards in your opening hand are just not what you're used to thinking about. But this matchup is so far departed from everything we've been taught about like conventional Hearthstone since 2014, that's just the kind of weird reality that becomes fact.
Yeah. Although I would have to argue with you, there's a lot of matches in the past that you could have actually kept a very specific card that is not being played until like turn 9.
I mean, we just talked about it.
Yeah, Alex Straza,
right?
It's like nothing changed since like beginning of time when you played against Contra Warrior. An example, against Contra Warrior in the past, you probably would keep Antonidas with a coin if you have that option, right? Because you could just slime as soon as possible and just get as much value as possible as well. But those were different times. Now we're just focusing on Taunt Warriors because they are becoming the Ragnars. Actually, it kind of fits because those portraits are like in the fire.
And we are, of course, amidst the Festival of Fire right now, making this all the more fitting.
Which reminds me that I need to complete my quests. That's a shield block.
It is.
Not a tech that you see often. So why would you pick it up for your deck? What are you predicting in the metagame if you pick up a shield block?
It's tough to say. I mean, it gives you a little bit of security against some of the more mid-rangey minions, and it might honestly be a tech decision to the fact that the aggro decks are now getting a little bit bigger, like I talked about before. The Evolve Shaman has these big Doppelgangster Evolve plays. They also have Thing from Below. They also have Stonehill Defenders to pick up big minions. So having a third Execute, if you want to look at it that way, with Shield Block, Shield Slam, is definitely high potential. It also gives you more security against Freeze Mage, which I think a lot of people would have expected a lot of, correctly so, in this tournament. We have seen a ton of it so far. And it's also, if the downside of it, though, is that it weakens your mirror matchup, because when you're playing Shield Block, it's normally just extra taunt minions that you're not playing, perhaps those Dirty Rats that we were talking about.
Yeah, that is true. At the same time, fatigue doesn't really matter. The game ends way before that. The Temple was though. That's something that might matter.
Well, it's just a matter of like which cards have you taken out to put that shield block in there, right? Like it could be Battle Rage, which is much, much better in this matchup.
Oh, yeah.
Because all the minions just poke into each other. Like every minion on board is injured for the entire matchup, essentially. So Battle Rage draws you enormous amounts of cards. And so if one player has Battle Rage, the other one has Shield Block, then the Battle Rage Taunt Warrior will be massively favored. So it's just a matter of he's probably dropped a card that's good in the Taunt Warrior mirror to make room for that Shield Block.
That is true. 5-7, and Fluffy is at 5-7 as well, I think. Actually, not sure.
Is he? That seems high. I think it might be 4. Hard to say. We're actually viewing from Odemian's perspective right now, so we can't even ask the observer to check for us. I think we just have to hope that Odemian mouse is over at some point in the near future. But
look at the outcome. The Dirty Rat actually picked up the best minion for Odemian. Harrison Jones doesn't really do much in this matchup, right?
Dirty Rat's still there?
Yes. Okay. So Dirty Ratting a Harrison Jones not only puts a minion that has actually high attack, it doesn't decrease the amount of minions with taunt keyword in the opponent's hand, and doesn't really matter when it comes to the card advantage, because most likely opponent will not have a weapon.
I'm sorry, this matchup's just so dumb. It's just constantly just 9 minions on the board that can't do anything to each other because they've all got more health than attack and they've all got taunt. There's no combat manipulation because every single minion has taunt. Both players are just playing solitaire, trying to windmill slam out as many taunt minions as they can.
I mean, it's kind of like a stir contest between, I don't know who, like.
Oh, you're right. It was 5. Look at that. It's 7 now.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just a stir contest. Like whoever breaks even at some point with the quest, right? And then you push it through. But other than that, it's kind of like a stalemate in Magic the Gathering sealed. You're just standing there. It's like you can't attack until someone gets a buff on every single minion. And a slam. Oh.
It's a really old school looking list at this point, right? Like slam and shield block are something that's been phased out quite rapidly recently, pretty much since Kalento created that list that he just hit rank 1 legend everywhere with. Just, you know, multiple times, multiple servers at will. That kind of became the standard base for the new list that was getting played. But Odemian clearly disagrees.
Interesting tech choices. Agree, this is so weird. I would like to see the entire list to like grasp the concept of what he's aiming for with those tech choices. Maybe he changed something else as well. But at the same time, he has Dirty Rats, right? So interesting. Both players now completed the quest, but who is ahead? That's the question.
Well, Fluffy does get to equip and fire first if he wants to.
And to brawl if he wants to.
Yeah,
as well.
the key from this point is brawl actually becomes a key card, sleep with the fishes becomes a key card, execute becomes a key card. General strategy for Control Warrior, for Taunt Warrior, it's definitely not Control Warrior. In the the slower matchups now is to try and use 0 removal if possible until you activate your quest, right? Yeah. Just stall the game, play a Taunt minion, be annoying, and then once you have your quest activated, you actually become this bizarre late game combo deck where your goal is just to set up the hero power to hit face over and over again. So your combo, if you want to look at it like that, is just clear the board and hit face every turn. That's what you're holding back all your removal for. Fluffy, from my standing, is in a much better position to keep doing that because he does have the brawls and the execute that we just saw him being used now, and he can just push damage. Plus, he has that kind of half-turn advantage by being the first to activate the quest, even if it was on the same numerical turn between the two players.
Yep. Very well said, actually.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, now Harrison Jones calms down, gets a card. Doesn't really matter that much.
More removal, just what he wants at this point. Just keep nailing face with that hero power.
In this case, if you just hit the minion with the hero power, you're happy as well. Like,
yep, gets to push 4 anyway, no big deal.
It's literally a removal in form of 2 mana, so you don't mind.
Yep. Still sets up lethal for the following turn as long as a minion and a hero power is able to connect. So Fluffy is looking like, again, in a very, very quick game. Yet again, it's going beyond turn 10, but yet again, the speed that these two players have been playing at means that it ends up being a very quick 3-2, even though it went the distance, Lothar. Probably our fastest series of the day.
Not probably. It was by a long shot.
And we had a 3-0, right? On stream. A Jade Druid 3-0 was probably slower than that matchup.
The 3-0 took like an hour and 30 minutes or something like that. It was actually quite long. Oh, we're back. Anyway, it was an interesting match. A lot of swingy turns. Both players had those. We have seen 2 matchups that weren't favorite for a player, and he ended up winning it.
Right.
So that's something you usually don't see. The Dirty Rats are everywhere. They're running rampant.
And it was 2 great matchups for Fluffy's Taunt Warrior that he really got good rats for. Like the rat hitting the Harrison Jones was very relevant because it allowed that 4 extra damage to get pushed that set up lethal. He was then able to Harrison Jones Odemian's weapon on the other side just to twist the knife a little bit more. And then, of course, the Dirty Rat in the Mage matchup.
That was brutal.
One of the very, very key cards. Depending on, again, where on that Mage spectrum you are, from, you know, Antonidas Alexstrasza to Medivh, wherever you come down on that, it's Dirty Rat and it's Harrison Jones, right? Those are the key cards in the matchup. And Fluffy really did nail that Dirty Rat. He went for both of his Dirty Rats at pretty good times as well. Both times I think he had a 50-50 to hit that Antonidas. The second time it did pay out for him. And yeah, Taunt Warrior, not a deck that we've seen a lot of, but a really strong performance from it in that series.
That's true. And we didn't see